They called her a bad mother. Until the truth came out. She stood in the grocery store, tears streaming down her face as strangers whispered and pointed. Her son lay on the floor, his screams echoing through the aisles, while she remained frozen, unable to pick him up. No one knew she'd broken 3 ribs saving his life the day before. No one knew anything about her truth. Hey everyone, if this opening grabbed your attention, you're about to witness an emotional journey that might change how you judge others forever. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more content that challenges perspectives and opens hearts. Sarah Morgan never imagined she'd become the most hated mother in Oakridge. At 32, she had once been the neighborhood's golden girl, valedictorian, college scholarship recipient, and eventually, a dedicated elementary school teacher. Her marriage to Michael, her high school sweetheart, had seemed picture-perfect from the outside. When their son Ethan was born 5 years ago, their family appeared complete. But appearances can be devastatingly deceptive. The whispers began at Ethan's preschool. The 4-year-old would sometimes arrive disheveled, with dark circles under his eyes. He'd have occasional unexplained bruises on his arms or legs. Sometimes he'd flinch when other parents approached too quickly. The teachers noticed his lunchbox often contained only a juice box and crackers. Twice, he arrived wearing the same clothes as the previous day. Something's not right with the Morgan boy, the preschool director confided to her staff during a meeting. Document everything. We may need to make a call. Sarah felt the stares when she dropped Ethan off each morning. The other mothers, once friendly, now huddled together, conversation stopping abruptly when she approached. She'd smile weakly, dark circles prominent under her own eyes, her once stylish appearance now reduced to hastily pulled back hair and whatever clean clothes she could find. "Did you see her yesterday?" whispered Diane, the PTA president, to another mother. She practically dragged that poor boy into class. He was crying for his daddy. The rumors spread like wildfire through Oakridge. Sarah Morgan was neglecting her son. Some whispered about possible abuse. Others claimed she had a drinking problem. A few suggested she was having an affair and resented the child who kept her tied to her marriage. None of them knew the truth. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon at Westfield Grocery. Sarah had reluctantly brought Ethan along for a quick shopping trip. The boy had been particularly difficult that day, refusing to eat breakfast, throwing his toys, and screaming when Sarah tried to dress him. In the cereal aisle, he spotted a colorful box with a cartoon character and demanded it. "Not today, sweetie," Sarah said softly. "We have cereal at home." What followed was a meltdown of epic proportions. Ethan threw himself onto the floor, screaming and flailing. Sarah stood beside him, her face a mask of exhaustion and pain. She didn't immediately pick him up. She couldn't. "Some people shouldn't be parents," muttered a woman loudly enough for everyone to hear as she pushed her cart past the scene. Another shopper took out her phone, recording the incident. "This is that Morgan woman everyone's talking about. Look how she just stands there while her child screams." The store manager approached, his face stern. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to control your child or leave the store." Sarah looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. The pain in her ribs was excruciating. She couldn't bend down to lift her son without feeling like she was being stabbed. But no one knew that. No one knew that just yesterday, she had thrown herself in front of a car to push Ethan out of the way when he'd broken free from her hand in a parking lot. No one knew about the 3 broken ribs the emergency room doctor had wrapped, advising her to take it easy, an impossible luxury for a single mother. No one knew that Michael, her supposedly perfect husband, had abandoned them 6 months ago, emptying their bank accounts and disappearing with his 23-year-old assistant. No one knew she was working 3 jobs to keep their home, teaching during the day, waiting tables at night, and doing online tutoring on weekends. No one knew that Ethan's behavioral issues had emerged after his father's departure, or that she'd been on waiting lists for affordable counseling services for months. No one knew that the bruises on his arms came from his own tantrums, or that the dark circles were from nightmares where he cried out for his daddy. No one knew she sent him to school in yesterday's clothes because the water had been shut off briefly due to a payment mix-up, or that his sparse lunches were because grocery money had to stretch until payday. As the whispers and stares intensified in the grocery store, something inside Sarah broke. She carefully lowered herself to the floor beside her screaming son, ignoring the searing pain in her side. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Mommy needs help. Can you be my helper and stand up?" Something in her tone reached through his tantrum. The little boy looked at his mother's tear-streaked face and slowly stood up. Sarah painfully rose to her feet, abandoning their shopping cart. "We need to go home now," she said, taking his hand. As they walked toward the exit, a voice called out, "Wait." Sarah turned to see an older woman approaching. It was Mrs. Winters, Ethan's former pediatrician's nurse, now retired. "Sarah, are you all right? You're holding yourself like you're in pain." The simple question, the first time anyone had asked about her well-being in months, was too much. Sarah's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, before her legs gave way. Mrs. Winters caught her before she hit the ground, calling for help. The store manager who had been so judgmental moments before rushed over. Someone called an ambulance. In the hospital, the truth finally emerged. X-rays showed Sarah's broken ribs, still fresh from saving her son's life. Blood tests revealed severe anemia and exhaustion. A social worker gently coaxed out the full story: the abandonment, the financial struggles, the 3 jobs, the wait lists for support services, and her desperate attempts to hold everything together for Ethan's sake. Dr. Elena Patel, the emergency physician, was furious when she learned how the community had treated Sarah. "This woman has been silently drowning while trying to save her child," she told the social worker. And instead of throwing her a lifeline, people recorded her struggles for social media. The video that had been taken in the grocery store had indeed gone viral, but not in the way the recorder had intended. Someone had recognized Sarah from the local elementary school and added context in the comments. "This is Ms. Morgan, the teacher who stays late to help struggling students and buys supplies with her own money. Shame on whoever is filming instead of helping." The tide began to turn. Former students and their parents recognized Sarah and began sharing stories of her kindness and dedication. A reporter from the local newspaper, sensing a deeper story, visited Sarah in the hospital and wrote a front-page article titled, "The Truth Behind the Whispers: A Mother's Silent Struggle." The article detailed Sarah's situation without sensationalism, just the stark reality of a woman doing everything humanly possible to keep her child safe, fed, and loved while facing impossible circumstances alone. The community of Oakridge was forced to confront its rush to judgment. The same mothers who had whispered behind Sarah's back now organized meal trains and childcare rotations. The school principal arranged for Ethan to receive priority counseling through the district's resources. A local attorney offered pro bono services to pursue child support for Michael, who was eventually located in Arizona. Mrs. Winters, the retired nurse who had been the first to see beyond the surface, became Sarah's fiercest advocate and friend. She moved into Sarah's spare bedroom for several weeks during her recovery, helping with Ethan and teaching Sarah that accepting help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. "The strongest people," Mrs. Winters told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching Ethan play in the yard, "are those who know when they can't be strong alone anymore." 6 months later, Sarah stood at the podium during a community fundraiser for single parents in crisis. The event had been organized by the same PDA mothers who had once shunned her. The proceeds would establish an emergency fund for parents facing sudden financial or medical hardships, a safety net that might have spared Sarah her darkest days. "We all have stories that remain untold," Sarah said to the crowded room. "Behind every parent struggling with a child in public, behind every missed school event or hastily packed lunch, there may be a battle you know nothing about. I was fighting to keep my head above water while everyone watched me drown, certain I wasn't trying hard enough to swim. She paused, looking at Ethan, now thriving in kindergarten, sitting proudly in the front row beside Mrs. Winters. But I also learned that when the truth finally comes to light, there is tremendous capacity for compassion in this community. The same people who once judged me have become my strongest support system. The lesson here isn't just about withholding judgment, it's about actively extending help before it's desperately needed. In the years that followed, Sarah became known not as the bad mother of whispered grocery store conversations, but as the catalyst for Oakridge's transformation into a community that truly cared for its most vulnerable members. The emergency fund helped dozens of families weather crises. A mentorship program paired struggling single parents with supporters. The school established more accessible counseling services. And Sarah herself slowly healed, not just her physical injuries, but the deeper wounds of isolation and judgment. She eventually returned to teaching full-time, became an advocate for family support services, and even found love again with a kind-hearted pediatrician who adored both her and Ethan. The whispers never completely stopped in Oakridge, but they changed in nature. Now people whispered about the remarkable resilience of that Morgan woman, about how she had turned her pain into purpose, about how her story had taught an entire community to look beneath the surface of struggling parents and ask, "How can I help?" instead of, "What is she doing wrong?" On Ethan's 10th birthday, as Sarah watched him blow out candles surrounded by friends and their families, Mrs. Winters squeezed her hand. "They called you a bad mother," the older woman said softly. "But you were always the best kind, the kind who would break more than ribs to protect her child. The kind who never gave up, even when standing alone." Sarah smiled through tears, watching her son's face glow in the candlelight. "I wasn't alone," she replied. "I just didn't know how to see the hands reaching out until I finally fell." Sometimes the truth takes too long to emerge. Sometimes judgment comes swift and mercy arrives late. But Sarah Morgan's story reminds us that beneath every struggling parent is a story we don't fully know, and that compassion, when finally extended, can rewrite not just one family's future, but an entire community's heart. If this story touched you, please remember to like and subscribe for more content that explores the hidden struggles we all face and the unexpected ways we find strength. Remember, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always.